Okay, so I'm sitting all the way in the back so I can see everybody. So now the only place that I can be attacked from is the front. Okay, so as I'm being attacked, arms come up, legs come up, right? They're protecting my torso. Use my legs, push back, get to the gun. Okay. So in that situation there, what I did is, now mind you, the target's a lot further away because I'm shooting steel. I'm shooting it with a 22, all right? But I still had to push the target a little further back and angle it so the deflection would go into the wall. So you push back with your legs, and basically you're gonna point shoot the gun from a very close position like this, okay? You just gotta be aware of where this hand is. If you're being attacked up high, the gun's gonna go low, okay? If you're being attacked low, the gun's gonna come high, right? If you manage to push the person back and you can get two hands on the gun like this, you get two hands on the gun. If they're far enough away that you can go to full extension to get line up your sights, then you'll do that as well. But if they're close enough where they might grab the gun and push it offline, keep the gun close and point shoot it. Inside of 3 feet, you're not going to miss, right? Just these are things you got to practice. Basically, that finger, wherever that finger is pointing, is where that bullet's going to go. Okay, so inside of 3 feet, aiming is really not necessary. Now, if you need to, one of the options might be actually getting up and creating distance. Okay, so in that situation, right? Because ideally, you don't want to stay in your seat, right? So same situation. Let's say I'm now in the middle of the train. I got nothing but old ladies behind me now, right? So I've set up a situation like that, right? I'm being attacked, right? Arms and legs come up, push back. Okay. So what I've done there is pushed back. I got up, right? Because I don't want to be confined to that seat, okay? And what I'm doing is I'm creating additional distance, okay? The other thing that's happening there is I'm still point shooting the gun initially. So as I come out of the holster, initially I'm pointing the gun with my finger here, right? I'm point shooting the gun, and then in the middle, like after the first two shots, I just point shoot them, and while I'm pumping that trigger, I acquire my sights, and then I start taking well-aimed shots. Okay, so that's how you handle that type of situation where you're being ambushed. Okay, so number one, never put anybody that is capable of harming you behind you in an environment that you're not familiar with, like a train or a bus. Okay, so I grew up in New York City. Okay, I rode the subway for many years. Okay, I always sat in a position where I could see everyone, and if that wasn't an option, I stood the whole subway ride. Hello, everyone. Today I want to talk to you guys about some techniques that could have saved the life of a young lady that was stabbed to death in the train in North Carolina. Okay, I don't want to butcher her name, so I'm just going to put it in the captions, put it in the title. It's all over the news. If you follow the news, you've heard about this. Okay, so this girl was basically attacked from behind. And a lot of people say, hey, there's nothing that she could have done. There's no way that she could have defended herself, okay? If she had taken some gun training, right, some advanced self-defense gun training courses, she probably would have survived that, even if she didn't actually have to go to a gun, okay? Because there's a lot of stuff that you're going to learn in a self-defense class that goes beyond just using the gun. In fact, when I teach a self-defense gun class, the assumption is that you've already learned the basics of how to use a gun, okay? So a self-defense gun class is not about using the gun. It's about using the tool, that tool or any other tool that you have available to yourself to defend yourself, okay? So one of the things, the first thing, right, in fact, that I teach in a self-defense class is situational awareness, okay? Being aware of your surroundings, who's coming in, who's going out, positioning yourself so that you can see everybody, okay? So in this situation, right, on this train, if I had gone into this train, I would have picked a seat where I could either see everybody, or I would have positioned myself in front of somebody that could not possibly be a threat to me, right? Like one of the ladies that was singing that train. Now, I'm not just saying this like after the fact that, okay, I watched the video of her stabbing and I'm like, okay, I came up with a solution. This is something that I kind of learned in the 4th and 5th grade, okay? In 4th and 5th grade, if you're not situationally aware, you get wedgies, all right? People sneak up to you behind you and they pull up your underwear up the crack of your ass, okay? That's what happens in the 4th and 5th grade. That's where most boys learn situational awareness, right? They know who the troublemakers are. They keep an eye on them, okay? Unfortunately, most girls don't have to deal with that, okay? Here's the thing. A lot of times in these schools, they have like a zero tolerance against bullying. But there's some real life things to learn there, okay? But anyway, that's a subject for a different video. But most boys, right, by the time they get to the 6th, 7th grade, they've learned the importance of situational awareness, okay? They got to know who the troublemakers are and where they are at all times, and they figure out where to position themselves, okay? They're not going to go into the bathroom, for example, with a couple of guys that they know that they've been having a problem with, okay? These are things that you learn in the 4th and 5th grade, okay? Now, most women don't learn these things. They don't have to deal with these things, right? They don't get that kind of abuse, okay? So where are they going to learn these things? Well, where are you going to learn? You're going to learn it from somebody that teaches self-defense, right? And it's not going to be a karate instructor or some kind of hand-to-hand MMA fighting. The type of fighting that they do is for a very controlled environment when they're in a ring. Okay, that's not where you're going to learn. They don't teach life and death self-defense, okay? Sometimes they might do a class or something on it, but that's not the core, right? That martial art does not revolve around, surviving through a deadly type of situation, okay? So the place where you're going to learn this, okay, is by taking an advanced self-defense gun course, okay? And usually before I even let anybody sit through a class like that, I got to know that they know how to use a gun, okay? So I have to have trained them on gun use, or I have to have proof that they've gotten gun training somewhere else. And usually even before the class even starts, I'll have them do some shooting so I can see how competent they are. But at the point that the class starts, it's no longer really about learning. It's not about learning to use the gun for the sake of itself. At this point, we're learning survival, and the gun is just one of many tools that's available to us that we're using. Okay, so the first thing, right, that we talk about, the first thing that we focus on, is situational awareness, and basically picking your ground. Okay, in that kind of situation where that girl was, again, stabbed on that train, had I gone into that train, okay, and this is, I grew up in New York City. I rode subway for many years, okay? When I go into a subway train, I sit where I can see the entire train, okay? I'm not going to put my back to, somebody that looks threatening or could potentially be threatening, okay? So if I got to sit in front of somebody, right, where I can't see them, I'm going to pick some little old lady or something, right? Again, not that necessarily that every man in that train is a threat, but if you have the ability, the potential, the capability of being a threat, I'm not going to, put my back to you on a subway train, okay? So again, these are things that I learned, by the time I was in 8th grade, I was riding the subway, I knew these things, okay? Because again, I grew up in the city, guys talk to each other about this sort of stuff, okay? So men are more likely to be aware of these things, whereas women are less likely to be aware of these things. In fact, women train for the exact opposite, okay? Women train themselves to avoid guys, right? They avoid that eye contact because they don't want to be hit on, okay? So a lot of times you go to the gym, you got the women, they got the headphones on, and they're avoiding contact with everybody. And that's the exact opposite of what they need to be training, because we're all creatures of habit, okay? So again, when I go into a room, I'm looking at everybody in the room. I want to know who they are. I want to know who's going in and out. I want to know where the doors are, the exits. I want to know all these things, okay? Women don't think about these things. So I've been doing this all my life. So I don't even have to try to do it. It just happens normally, okay? With women, because they train to avoid that eye contact so that they don't get hit on and be put in that uncomfortable position, they train themselves to not see things, okay? So that's basically an imitation to get killed, okay? So what they're doing is they're avoiding the small problem of having to tell somebody that they're not interested, okay? They're avoiding that problem, but they're inviting the much larger problem, okay, of getting killed. Okay, so that needs to change. Okay, that's a cultural thing that needs to change, where women intentionally don't look at the surroundings. Okay, so with this type of a situation now, where that girl was in the train, the first thing that she should have done was pick a better seat. Okay, again, keep track of who's coming in, who's going out. She sees somebody come in, he sits behind her. That might be a good, get up and move, okay? Even if it's to get up and go look at the map on the wall, right? Again, these are things that, slide things that you learn growing up in the city. I'm not just going to get up and go move to another seat. I'm going to get up. I'm going to go pretend to look at the map on the wall at the subway stops, right? Because I don't want to, again, invite a problem with somebody thinking, oh, why did I get up? Why did that guy get up? He doesn't want to sit next to me, So I'm going to go look at the map on the wall. And then I'm going to go sit down in a different seat that puts me in a better tactical position. Okay, so again, these are things that you're not going to learn this from a liberal arts teacher, right? You got to go to a gun class. You got to go to an advanced gun class. You're going to have to go through a couple of the early classes where you learn to shoot a gun. So eventually you can graduate to an advanced class where you're actually learning self-defense. And again, the gun is at that point, the gun is a small part of this thing. Okay, so with the situation where this girl was in, she actually did the right thing in terms of, after she was attacked, what did she do? Right, she curled up into a ball. She put her arms up and her knees up, protecting her torso. Okay, so that came instinctively to her. Okay, and I am going to include a picture so you guys can see that. Okay. So she put up her arms, she put up her knees to protect her torso. That came instinctively. What needed to happen is that needed to happen about 3 seconds earlier, okay, before she was actually attacked, okay, because that alone probably would have saved her, because once you got your arms and your legs up, here's the thing: the guy most likely had a pocket knife, right? That's what they said, a pocket knife, something like this. Something like this, in order to actually kill you, it's got to really penetrate pretty deep, right? So if your arms are in the way, right, and he's not going to get full penetration, okay? You're going to get cut, okay? Getting cut is one thing. You are going to get cut, but you're not going to die, okay? So she needed to get her arms and her legs up, which she did, but again, she did it about 3 seconds too late, and in order to do that, she had to see this happen, right? She had to see this threat approaching her, and the only way you're going to do that is if you can see. That's got to be in front of you. Okay, so having the dude behind her, right? And it could have been anybody, all right? Could have been anybody, where she's got absolutely no way of knowing what's going to happen. That is what got her killed. Okay, not knowing. The not knowing part will get you killed. Now, what happens after that? Okay, so basically she puts her arms up, she puts her legs up. The guy's in some alternate reality where she had taken a gun course, right? The guy's stabbing away from her, okay? So she's here. She's up like this. I can't get my legs up, right? Push, okay? She could have easily pushed him back with her feet, which were already up. They instinctively came to that position. So this is important, right? We want to work with our natural instincts. Okay, so in a situation like that, your hands are going to come up. In fact, a lot of times I train people to come here and then go to the gun and come out to your position. Okay, the reason is because that's where you're gonna be from. You're gonna be here, then you can go, but your hands are naturally going to be up. Right? That's just what naturally happens. And again, here's a girl that probably had never gotten any type of training, and she instinctively got her hands up and her legs up, but she just did it 3 seconds too late. So you might say, hey, how's this girl going to push this big guy back? Listen to that. I got 3 kids. Okay, I've changed enough diapers. Okay, a 3-year-old toddler has more than enough strength in his legs to push big 250-pound me, right? 250 pounds, they can easily push me back, okay? And that's a 3-year-old toddler, okay? So this girl had more than enough strength in her legs to push this dude off, okay, if he's trying to stab her, okay? And that would have changed everything, because from there, okay, she basically would have pushed him off and then moved, okay? And here's the thing, initially I thought that there was nobody in that train that was willing to help her, okay? Because that's what it looked on the first video that I saw. But then I saw that, hey, about, I don't know, 15 seconds later, actually this was after the guy got up and I think went out the door at some point. And so the guy did actually, somebody did go over to her, right? Did get up. So what she needed to do was buy some time, some 15 or 20 seconds. That, and that would have been pushing off, okay? Pushing the dude off and getting up and moving, okay? That would have saved her life. But again, that, if she had been aware that she was about to get stabbed, the rest of the things would have naturally fell in place, okay? Because like I said, you don't have to, if somebody's being attacked, you don't have to actually train them. I mean, we'll still drill it, but then naturally arms are going to come up, legs are going to come up in that type of situation, and they're going to naturally just push off, okay? They're going to push you off, and that is going to buy you the time that you need, okay? Now, suppose the guy kept coming at her. What do you do from there, right? Now you got a lot of options. If you got a gun, right? Right now, if you got a gun, now you've got options, right? Most likely, if she just was able to survive the initial attack and push the guy back off, the guy probably would have stopped his attack. That is what's most likely to have happened, okay? But if he had kept coming at her, yeah, now you need a gun, okay? You need if you're a woman, small girl like that, you need a gun. Now, a lot of times women will say, hey, but what if I take boxing classes and if I take MMA classes? Listen, let's put things into perspective here for a second, okay? And this has been tested out many times. You take the best female MMA fighter woman, right? Best female MMA fighter, and you put her against the worst MMA fighter, okay? The worst dude is going to beat the best woman, okay? I mean, that's just how fighting is. When you're in a situation, size counts, weight counts, okay? So in a hand-to-hand fight, the bigger person is usually going to win. You can overcome that with some skill, okay, to a certain extent. But if you've got two people who are relatively equal skill, or even if there's some disparity, right? If they're relatively close in skill, the bigger person's usually going to win, okay? And that's just how it is, okay? If you pull out all the rules, allow for grappling, allow for using your weight, throwing your weight around, the bigger person's going to win. So, and on top of that, it takes years and years and years to get proficient in hand-to-hand fighting, okay? Whereas gun training, I mean, you can get pretty good pretty fast, at least to a level where you can defend yourself. And in a situation like that, you have, you have a guy there that's probably has no training, right? He's just a wacko that goes around stabbing people, right? If the girl had some training, she definitely would have survived that type of situation. Okay, so let's go back to, okay. So the guy is attacking her. She pushes him off, okay, and he's still coming at her. Okay, what you do is from that, remember, your hands are up. You come here. You're basically shooting from here. You're not going to extension because the guy's probably like 2 feet away from you, right? You go to extension, the gun's going to get knocked offline or it's going to get taken from you, right? You come out, you come close here, right? Or close, up here like this. Careful not to put your hand in front of the gun, okay? But you're going to come into this close retention position and you're going to shoot from here. And what I want to do is I'm aiming at the hip area, not the chest in that type of situation, because I don't know, I didn't see the surroundings, but I train people to assume that there's always, in a situation where you're ambushed, there might be other people behind the guy that you're shooting, okay? So I want to be shooting from a high angle down, okay? So I'm either going to be up here shooting down, right? So if the bullets pass through, they'll go down that way, okay? or if I can't get this high, right, maybe because I'm being grappled up here, I'm going to be shooting into the hip area, okay? Now, you might say that, hey, shooting somebody in the hip is not going to have the same effect as shooting somebody, in the chest. It's not going to drop them as fast. I mean, listen, in a situation like that, you're gonna pretty much dump the magazine, right? Especially if you're carrying a small compact gun that only has like 6 or 7 rounds. You're pretty much gonna dump the magazine, okay? And at that distance, you're not aiming. You're not going to your sights. Right? You're coming up. You're going to the hip, or if you're coming up here, you're going maybe a little bit higher. You're probably gonna dump, because remember, this guy's all, he's all sugared up. He's all on his adrenaline, and he's attacking. He's probably not gonna feel those shots. So you gotta put a lot of firepower on this guy to get him to stop. Okay, you gotta basically shoot him in the hip to the point where he can't stand. He can't stand on a broken hip. Okay, so let's play this out the way this would work. Now, normally if I'm doing this with a student, what I'll do is I'll put a paper, like a cardboard target, in front of him to avoid the splatter coming back. Okay, what I've done here is I didn't feel like getting out a cardboard target. So I situated this chair so that the bullets kind of deflect off the steel. And what I've done is I'm shooting with a 22. Okay, so 22s are great training guns. And also 22s are notorious for jamming up, right? So if the gun jams up on you, you do a tap, rack, work that into your drill. Don't pause and be like, duh, the gun doesn't stop working. Tap, rack, keep shooting, okay? So this is something that has to be drilled, even with a 9mm, because here's the thing. Normally when we're shooting and we're coming out here, we're pushing into the gun. The way these guns work, these recoil guns, the frame has to stay still while the slide is running back and forth. If the whole gun is moving, that you're losing some of that energy. The slide may not come back all the way. So even if you got a Glock, right, and like a Glock 43, because like normally you're shooting here, you got a stronger grip. If you're shooting here, if you're shooting one-handed like this, okay, you've got a weaker grip. That gun might jam up on you, okay? Because again, there's the entire gun, including the frame, is moving back and forth. So you got to get comfortable with the tap and rack. Train with a 22. This is the Ruger SR22 that I use for these type of drills. Again, we're not even going to our sights, because normally I carry a gun with a red dot on it and stuff like that. This is this is really close-up stuff. You're not aiming, you're point shooting, okay? When you come up, basically, you see how my finger's pointing in the direction that I want to hit. Now, normally, if I'm doing this with a cardboard box, the cardboard box would be like right here, okay? Again, I didn't feel like getting out a cardboard box right now, so I'm shooting at that target, which is a little further away. And because I'm not aiming, I'm probably going to get some misses. It doesn't matter. I'm just demonstrating the exercise, okay? So here we are. We're here, okay? We got the guy in front of us, right? Because we don't want anybody sitting behind us that we don't know or we don't feel comfortable with, right? So the guy is attacking me. You're up here, right? Boom, boom, boom. Push back with your leg. Get out. Tap, rack. Fuck this gun. Okay. It might be the ammo. I haven't done this drill, so I had to do a tap and rack there a bunch of times. Hey, that's part of the exercise, right? So ideally, if once you get that shot off, if you can, you want to get up. Okay, so after you do that push, if you have the ability to get out of your seat, that's preferable. Okay, so let's do a mag change. Maybe it was a magazine that was bad. Let's do a mag change on this. Normally, I keep an extra magazine on my belt horizontally. I got some extra magazines in my pocket here. Run the chamber. So this is a single action, double action. Okay, so again, this is normally is a really good gun for this type of drill, except when it's jamming. But again, work that into the drill, man. Don't let it bother you about it's jamming. Okay, so ideally, we're here, we're attacked. We push back, get up. Okay, it was a magazine. Okay, so get used to moving on. Get used to moving and shooting. A lot of time, one of the things that people have said, 21-foot rule, right? You can't win a knife fight inside of 21 feet. Here's the thing: you can win that knife fight. Okay, I'm not saying you're not going to come out of it with some scratches, right? You might get scratches, but hey, scratches here is not a big deal, okay? Even scratches here is not, getting sliced, that's not going to kill you. Getting stabbed is what's going to kill you, okay? So that penetration is what's going to kill you. So we have to accept the fact that we might get cut up, okay? We're looking to survive this thing, right? We're not looking to come out of this looking pretty, okay? So let's do this again, now that I got a magazine in the gun that actually works. So we're here. Get the fuck back. Get back here. Okay. So what happened there? Like I said, that's a lot further than I normally that target should be right here, right? That's where the paper target is. So, but what happened there? I came out. I'm point shooting as I'm moving away. As I'm creating distance, right? I got a couple of shots off. At some point, I was able to actually transition to my sights, and I was able to get an accurate hit on target. Okay, so as you back up, right, as you come out, right, you're point shooting, but while you're point shooting, while you're working that trigger finger, you're hunting your sights. Okay, so you come out, boom, 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 boom. There you go. I got my sights. Okay, so in this type of a self-defense type of scenario, right? I mean, you're not going to do it anyway, right? It's not natural. But you don't go to your iron sights first before you start pulling the trigger, okay? You point the gun, you start pulling you start pumping that trigger, right? And then you acquire your sights and you take some accurate shots, okay? So these are things that you gotta drill, right? These are things that you gotta practice. It's not, and again, it's not about the gun. It's about, and here's the thing, I'm not, in fact, if you guys notice, I didn't even mention anything in this video about come to me for training, right? Go wherever you want, okay? It's not about that. I'm not trying to sell anything here. I'm giving you guys the information for free, okay? This is the type of training that you got to do. What you do need, though, is a place that will allow you to do realistic training, okay? Because a lot of gun ranges, basically, you got to sit there, they won't even let you come out of the holster and shoot, right? That's not realistic. So you need to find a place where you can do realistic training, the kind of stuff that I'm doing right here, okay? Let's do, so again, I like to keep the holster horizontal here. Let's do a tactical reload here. So I'll get this out, pull this in. Oh, that was, yeah, there should be one round. Yeah, they got one. That was actually my last round. I got one round in the chamber. So again, and you gotta do repetitions with this, man. Just go through it, man. And again, I know I got one bad magazine here now, right? I know one of these magazines was bad in here. You know what? I'm keeping it, right? It's actually going to be very useful for training me and for me training other people where, hey, you don't know if the magazine's bad. Figure out what you got to do when the gun's not working, okay? Let's do this again. Here, come here, push back, get out. Okay, so after I'm done shooting, cover up the gun, right? I do my scan. Okay, now, why am I doing that scan? Okay, so the reason why I teach people to do that scan is, aside from the fact that we're looking for other threats, right? We're breaking tunnel vision, right? Because otherwise, if you don't drill in that scan and assess, after you take those shots, you're gonna be there and you're gonna freeze, and you're gonna stay there. Okay, and chances are nobody's even gonna approach you in the train because they're afraid that you might shoot them too, right? So everybody's going to be frozen in that train, okay? So what's going to happen is the train's going to come to the stop, the door's going to open, the cop's going to be there, and they're going to see you with a gun like this frozen, and they're going to freaking shoot you, okay? So that's why we cover up the gun. We do the tunnel vision so we can kickstart our brain to figure out what it needs to do next, okay? Which is get the gun back in the holster, okay? Getting the gun back in the holster is really, really, really important, okay? Now, if I have the ability to move, right? So let's say I push this guy back, because he might just be a drunk. We don't know. We're now playing through this situation where this girl was in, where this guy was committed to stabbing her, right? And presumably he would have, after she pushed him back, he would have immediately came after him, okay? But you might have a situation where the dude's just drunk, right? Or he's completely incompetent, he's on drugs or whatever, and after you push him back, he just falls over, okay? So you got to also drill that possibility, okay? So you're here. You're being attacked. Push back. Get back, man. Get back. Okay? He's no longer coming after me, okay? He's staying on the ground, okay? So you also got to drill for that possibility. So you can't just look at this one situation, the way it unfolded, and assume that that's the way it's always going to play out, okay? You have to drill in different scenarios. And one of the things that I will do in the advanced classes is I will actually role play with people where we put the real guns away and we bring out the plastic airsoft guns, okay? And for this drill, the real guns have to be away, like nowhere in the room, okay? So everybody's got these plastic guns or plastic knives that are obviously plastic, okay? And now we do role-playing drills, okay? Where we do different types of simulations. So people can figure out, at what point do they go to their gun, okay? Is it, in some situations, is it enough to just back away, okay? So again, this is something that people have to actually experience. So one of the things I'll tell people is, when it comes to training, right, don't just think about the gun training, okay? That's just one aspect of the self-defense training. Also think about everything else. And we can do the gun, I mean, we can go so far with a real gun on fake targets, okay? But at some point, we have to transition over to real people and fake guns, okay? So that's an important part of the training, okay? So it's not always real guns on fake targets, because the training is going to be really compromised. At some point, you also have to do real people with real types of situations, scenarios, and fake guns, okay? So yeah, most of the people that I know, right, other than the ones I've trained, right, most of the people that I know that own guns, the only type of gun training they've done is real guns on fake targets. And that's a very limited type of training, okay? They don't actually go through the whole role-playing thing. So LARPing, okay? A lot of times people will thumb their noses at LARPing exercises. But you know what? That actually brings your training to a higher level, okay? So, you call it what you want, let people make fun of it if they want. That's a really advanced form of training. Doing this, this live action role playing where you're working up different scenarios, right? Or the instructor's working up different scenarios, and a lot of times it can involve multiple people, and it's forcing you to think your way through it. Either sometimes you have the time and you have the ability to think fast, right? Or think slow, right? And sometimes you got to think really fast. So you got to figure out what you got to do. So, so I'll go through this with people. So that's the type of training that you need if you're really interested in self-defense type of training. And here's the thing: it's not just about the gun. Okay, the gun is just one tool. All of the stuff that I've been talking about in this video, like about how the situational awareness stuff and how she could have pushed the dude off with her legs. Okay, if the attack had been from behind. We're not even talking about a gun at that point, right? That alone probably could have saved her life, right? If the attack was from the front, she had her arms up and her legs up the way she actually did, right? She did that. She naturally, instinctively did that, okay? And from there, she was in the prime position to push back, which I think she would have instinctively done, because my 3 and 4 year olds, were doing that, okay? So she's going to do that, right? But the main point there is knowing in advance, because she did everything correct, but she did it 3 seconds too late. So, okay, so drop some comments. Let me know what you guys think, and I will talk to you all soon.